Welcome back to the Papa Schro Knows podcast. There's plenty to get into and talk about. Chiefs offseason, trades, free agency, the draft as well. I will be giving a grade for the Chiefs offseason so far up to this point at the end of March. We're also talking MMA and UFC, talking UFC 313 and the fallout that we've seen from that between Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev, the new light heavyweight champion. A little bit of just a rundown of what's going on in the UFC right now and looking ahead to the next couple of events as well. Like I said, plenty to talk about kind of in that weird time where it's a lot going on, a lot of exciting stuff in the sports world. Football's on the back burner. March Madness, of course. Got a couple other sports running around out there doing some stuff that your boy doesn't pay attention to much with the NFL and the NBA, as well as plenty of MMA to go around. So make sure you lock in, smash that subscribe button, smash that like button as well. I do appreciate all the support greatly, and what I've seen. We are back here on the Papa Schro Knows podcast, so let's get into it. So it is that time of year once again. A lot has unfolded already. Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs front office has obviously been very active to start free agency, and as we head into the draft, we'll see what the Chiefs are looking for. We kind of got an idea a little bit of what's going to shape up, helping out that left side of the line. Of course, the big trade with Joe Thuney going to the Chicago Bears and franchise tagging Trey Smith. We'll see if a deal comes out of that. But just to get into it, we're going to break everything down and kind of talk about what the Chiefs have been up to these last few weeks since the Super Bowl. And first things first, I've got the transaction log pulled up for the Kansas City Chiefs, which, interestingly enough, I guess I haven't, looked a ton through transaction logs in my day, but no trades are on the transaction log, so I have that pulled up as well for the Joe Thuney trade, of course, that we will go over. Trey Smith, February 28th, franchise tag, non-exclusive franchise tag, I might add. So we will see what kind of deal Trey Smith gets. It'll be interesting, obviously, with cap space now, where the Chiefs are at, and, what kind of cap manipulation we'll see with, obviously, Trey Smith is going to command a big deal. He's one of the best guards in the league. And, one of the other better guards in the league, and we saw him play left tackle there in the postseason towards the end of the season, was, of course, Joe Thuney, who was traded. So we will go to that next. It's going to be a 2026 fourth-round pick, so that's next year. The Chiefs will add another pick. And I do like the trade personally. I know very polarizing for Chiefs Kingdom in general, this trade, and when I first saw it, I wasn't sure how I felt. I didn't like it. I didn't expect it. Obviously, the Chiefs are planning on Kingsley Sumatia assuming that role at left guard. We'll see what they do in the draft. I think you still probably have to try to draft some depth at that position. I don't know if you necessarily need to draft a starter. Maybe thought Wanye Morris could fill in there. Mike Caliendo, who was just re-signed last week. I don't know. I'm interested to see. Obviously, there's going to be some competition for that left guard spot, I think. The rest of the line pretty locked up at this point, and, we'll get into the left tackle position, but obviously you got Jawan Taylor at right tackle. You got right guard Trey Smith, center Creed Humphrey, and then the left side of the line was the part that was like, what are we doing here? So the fact that they decided to kind of blow up the left side of the line, it was already in shambles. So keeping the right side intact, I know we all have our different feelings about Jawan Taylor. I think he stepped up in the big moments. Obviously, this last Super Bowl is a completely different story. Very rough game for the offensive line just in general. But when you have a left guard playing left tackle, against an elite defensive line, that's always going to be hard to, make something happen. And I obviously went over all of my feelings and emotions about the Super Bowl, and, we talked through it and broke it down. But going forward, I think that, if you can secure another mid-round pick, and, Veach has shown that he is well apt at drafting in those rounds. I think really when it comes to Veach, for me personally, if we're talking about the draft, it's position-wise. And the offensive line has been a little bit of a struggle, but this front office has shown us that they can draft interior linemen very well. It's the tackles that are a problem. So I don't have much of a problem trading Joe Thuney. He's obviously getting up there. I think 31 or 32. He's been in the league for a long time. I mean, you got to think he was on the Patriots and won Super Bowls with the Patriots. So, or maybe just a Super Bowl against the Rams. I want to say he was involved in that Super Bowl. So, Thuney's been in the league a long time. Shout out to Joe Thuney, though. I mean, he was absolutely great as a Chief. Was probably the best left guard in the league for his tenure with the Kansas City Chiefs. And, they built the best interior offensive line in the league. Unfortunately, that doesn't translate well to pass blocking. It's your tackles you got to worry about. So I felt like the outrage was fairly warranted, but only if, it's the offensive line. I get it. Everybody's just worried about the offensive line, but the interior of the line is not the issue for the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't think. And, obviously you don't want it to become an issue. And I'm going to get into breaking down some film on Sumatia. We got to see him at guard last week of the season against the Denver Broncos, as well as Wanye Morris again. I broke down some of his film last offseason. That was the first one of my offseason film breakdowns. So look forward to some more offseason film breakdowns and player-specific ones heading into the next season. I also would like to talk about, or would like to break down some film. We're going to talk about it, but left tackle Jalen Moore obviously is a big deal for the Chiefs, which I kind of started to see on Twitter. Jalen Moore kind of gaining some traction, who filled in for, why can I not think of buddy's name? Trent. The left tackle in San Francisco that seems to have slipped my mind at this moment, but obviously one of the best left tackles in the league. And San Francisco just had a ton of injuries last year, and Jalen Moore was able to get a pretty good deal from the Chiefs for a couple of years. Moving on to Hollywood Brown. He was re-signed, of course. Looking at his deal, it's just another one-year deal. It's going to be a base salary 3.5, prorated signing bonus $3 million. That is going to equal up to a cap number of 6.8 basically on the cap. So not a huge hit there, and I think something that probably needed to be done. I think they paid him a little bit more this go around. But obviously another round of free agency and other teams can get in there. You didn't know at that point what was going to happen with the Bengals. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins both needed to be signed, and they did get signed and got their money, a whole lot of money too, for them. So, I think that the receiving core is kind of shored up. Obviously we got our fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever you want to do, but that receiving core is healthy, because I do think that the Chiefs receiving core has potential to be one of the better ones in the league, honestly. I mean, based off of just the system that the Chiefs run, you got a couple of guys, Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown. I mean, I talked about it last year in my film breakdown, Hollywood Brown, over the offseason, of that he just fits in perfectly with his offense. And with Rashee Rice, now we've seen what Xavier Worthy can do as well. And, maybe you get a similar offense to back at the beginning of Patrick Mahomes' career, which I think is what the Chiefs really would probably like to do, where you can get some more explosive plays, but you also have this underlying of just a solid group with an amazing scheme from Andy Reid, and I mean, I think we all have our own feelings on, obviously, the offense and offensive coordinator and, those kind of things, but, we'll see what happens and what opens up throughout the season. But I do think that the Chiefs are in really good shape right now with their receiving core. And we'll see if they add to that in the draft, possibly. I mean, you're still going to have Sky Moore hanging around, probably. I mean, this would be the year that if he's going to get cut and not just walk at the end of his deal, like this is the year that that's going to happen, I would assume, going into his final year. McCole Hardman obviously departed. He's a Green Bay Packer now that we saw. So I'm going to go real quick over March 12th that had a lot of just signings of, guys sticking around from the practice squad or, guys that we've seen here and there. Keontae Ingram, the running back. Anthony Firkser, the tight end, which I don't think that he was on the roster at all last year. I could be wrong, but I don't remember Firkser being part of the team. Jason Brownlee, wide receiver. Deion Bush, of course, we all know, who had the big interception of Lamar Jackson in the AFC Championship game a couple of years ago now. Baylor Cupp, the tight end. Chukwuebuka Godric, who, honestly, if you know him, I mean, you know why you know him. He's the one that got picked up with Wanya Morris last year in Kansas. Siaki, I'm going to mess this up. Siaki Ika is what I'll go with. Defensive tackle. Fabian Lovett, defensive tackle. Chris Oladokin, longtime practice squad Chiefs quarterback. Justin Ross. My Justin Ross fans out there. Do we still have hope? Do we still believe that Justin Ross is... I'll say, is Justin Ross ever going to contribute to the Chiefs' offense? I'm leaning on... I mean, there's a possibility he could, give a little bit of value to that receiving corps, but I don't think not like anyone had hoped in the beginning of the Justin Ross era, I guess is what I'll call it. Darius Rush, cornerback. Eric Scott, cornerback. Tyquan Thornton, wide receiver. Sean Bradley, linebacker. Jason Taylor, safety. Signed a reserve/future contract. Malik Herring sticks around, which we've seen quite a bit of. Chiefs longtime long snapper James Winchester re-signed. Cole Christensen, and then Robert Tonyan was added as he signed, which will be interesting to see if Tonyan makes the team going into the season. I don't know if I don't know. That one was a super interesting move to me because I feel like he's kind of a guy that maybe could, hang out and hang around, which now thinking about it, going into the season, they might have signed him. He might have been stuck around on the practice squad all year. I'm not 100% sure. Throw that in the comments. Let me know if you know for sure if Robert Tonyan has been with this team. Because now I can't remember when I saw that exactly. I remember seeing that the Kansas City Chiefs had picked up his contract for 2025, but I do believe they signed him in the preseason. He's kind of been hanging out with the practice squad all season, which always solid to have good veteran, talent and, some type of leadership around, and especially that tight end group that the Chiefs are very much ready for moving on from Travis Kelce. Obviously, that was a lot of talk over the last few weeks. I think that was 2 weeks ago or so, where Travis Kelce announced he will be back in 2025. And I don't know, after the Super Bowl performance, I was almost ready to say, it is time to move on. But to also see Kelce out there and be a part of the locker room, I think that, they're just trying to figure out exactly where to go. And you would like to see, obviously, the kid that was the rookie this year, and I cannot think of his name now either. Names are just slipping right out of my grasp at the moment. But I guess if you know, you know. But Noah Gray obviously has been a solid option for some years, and playing behind Kelce, it almost feels like he kind of just mirrors his game, which, we'll see fizzle out over time. But it's nice to see that the Chiefs are going to have some type of lineage from, again, one of the greatest tight ends of all time to play this game to, help, foster that for the next generation and the next era behind Travis Kelce that comes in to help out with this offense. On to March 13th. This was the day that obviously free agency went into effect. And now let's go back to that because the Tooney deal was, I feel like, announced prior to this, but obviously when it went into effect March 13th, the Joe Tooney trade for the 4th round pick goes into effect. The Chiefs signed Jalen Moore, left tackle, Elijah Mitchell, running back, and Christian Fulton, cornerback. On to the next day, Nick Bolton re-signed. Bailey Zappi brought in to back up, obviously, for the Chiefs. And then a few days later, Kareem Hunt re-signed. Gardner Minshew signed. And I will be interested to see, I'm sure there's probably going to be some competition between Zappi, Minshew, and Oladokin. Is kind of like, another name that's, Buechele, Shane Buechele, that obviously went on to Buffalo. And I'm actually curious to know, is Shane Buechele still sticking around in Buffalo with the Bills? But he was on the Chiefs practice squad, and a guy you saw in the preseason every year for what felt like 2, 3, maybe 4 years with the Chiefs before he went on to Buffalo. Oladokin, I'm sure, has been that guy over the last, man, it seems like 3 to 4 years with Oladokin that he's been around with the Kansas City Chiefs at this point. So get some competition for the backup spot. March 18th, Juju Smith-Schuster re-signed with Kansas City Chiefs. Jerry Tillery comes over from the Minnesota Vikings and signs to add some depth to the D tackle position. And then Mike Caliendo has re-signed as of March 21st. And as of March 24th, Mike Pennell re-signed with the Chiefs, and Marlon Tuipulotu. There we go. Took me a second, but another D tackle. So got some really good depth, I think, at D tackle to help out with Chris Jones, and of course the departure of Tershawn Wharton. So two guys that, I think, three guys really, because you got to add McCole Hardman into that, and another polarizing Kansas City Chief. I think that at the end of the day, McCole Hardman wasn't what we hoped he would be, right? I think a lot of people thought he was kind of going to be the replacement for Tyreek Hill. He was going to be able to kind of fill that role. He just cannot track the deep ball, and that's the problem that the Chiefs have had in the years since Tyreek Hill's departure. They don't have a guy that can track the deep ball, and that has hurt them. We saw with MVS, ton of drops. We've seen it with McCole Hardman. These guys just cannot track that deep ball, and it is what it is. But I think McCole Hardman was, able to add a lot of value to the Chiefs. Of course, he catches the game-winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl a year ago against the 49ers. I think that McCole Hardman added plenty of value to this team over the last few years, but versus our expectations that we had of McCole Hardman, didn't quite pan out. But shout out to McCole Hardman. Shout out to Big Turk Wharton, man. I feel like every single time on defense over the last couple of years, and I'm breaking down film, and it's like Turk Wharton is doing something that is going unnoticed, or, and that showed up this year. I mean, I can't remember how many sacks Turk Wharton had this year. I'll look it up and double check real quick. But I feel like Tershawn Wharton had a great season. He gets paid. And you'd love to see it. And, of course, last but simply not least at all, Joe Thuney, which out of the three departures that I mentioned, may be the, who added the most value to this team, was absolutely terrific for the Chiefs at left guard. And again, as I said earlier, formed the best interior offensive line in the entire NFL, and I don't think that's debatable. Hey, I'm a homer, so, I'll admit it, but at the same time, the best interior offensive line in the NFL. So in 5 years with Kansas City Chiefs, Tershawn Wharton had 13.5 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, which half of them, 7 of them, came just this last season in 2024. 6.5 sacks this season. Total of 114, 56 total solo tackles, but total tackles, 114 over the last few years. 26 quarterback hits. Let's see here. Just approximate value. Either way, solid career for Tershawn Wharton. Reminded me a lot of losing Kalen Saunders, which seen him mention, or it was Willie Gay actually that was mentioned, that's kind of been linked. I don't know if we see a Willie Gay return, which I didn't realize he was a free agent if he is. But I've seen that a lot on Twitter, where a lot of people are, wanting Willie Gay to come back to the Chiefs, which I don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, it adds depth, but I don't know really where. I mean, would help in coverage for sure. I don't know, but it's hard to, figure out where he is pieced in the rotation when you got Nick Bolton, who just re-signed on a big deal, $15 million APY. You got Drew Tranquill still around. You got Leo Chanel still on a rookie deal. I mean, if you could get Willie Gay for cheap to, just help out with the rotation, I don't mind that. One guy that is not on this list, and I think this was just in the last couple of days that I saw, defensive end Charles Omenihu is re-signing with the Kansas City Chiefs for 1 year. That is not on the transaction list, so maybe just not pen to paper kind of thing yet. But all in all, I do like what the Chiefs have done so far. To give them a grade as of March 25th, Tuesday evening, March 25th, I would say right now that the Chiefs, I would give a personal grade of maybe a B- right now. Nothing super exciting or, no, I don't think any like real sexy signing, really, or throwing a ton of money around, obviously. But Jalen Moore, you take care of a gaping hole at the left tackle position that has been needed to be addressed for what feels like forever at this point. Elijah Mitchell, I really like that signing. Losing Samaje Perine, Christian Fulton, adding some depth to the cornerback position. You keep Nick Bolton, which is very good, but obviously there's still a lapse in coverage there. But I mean, Nick Bolton has been absolutely terrific, and if Nick Bolton gets near you, you're going down. I think he's the best tackling linebacker in the NFL probably at this point. Losing Joe Thuney is tough, but at least getting that 4th round pick in compensation for Joe Thuney, I think is a healthy move, I guess we'll say. Just because, obviously Thuney's getting up there in age. You got to think about the longevity of this run, as, we've seen plenty as the dynasty is over. I put air quotes around that because it's far from over. This team is going to be competitive, in January for, I think, the foreseeable future, as long as they continue to make these moves. You got to make these tough decisions and trade guys like Joe Thuney that ideally you don't necessarily want to, but it's the nature of the beast, right? And all in all, this team at the current moment has just over $15 million in salary cap left over. So they're ahead right now of the Falcons, Bucks, Bills, and Ravens. And the Bucks and Falcons are both negative in the salary cap, but so ahead of the Bills and Ravens. The Bills by $12 million. The Bills only have $3 million in cap space at the moment, and the Ravens close with 11.2. And I'm not sure though. Jerry Tillery, I couldn't find his contract anywhere online, the exact amount on Over the Cap or Spotrac. Nobody actually had it, so I don't know if that's factoring in Jerry Tillery's deal or not. So we'll see kind of how that fluctuates and what the actual number is on his deal. But so far, B- is what I would say. We'll see what the draft and what the Chiefs do. I'm planning on doing at least like 1 or 2 more mock drafts before we get to the draft here in a couple of weeks. But I overall kind of like what the Chiefs have done so far in the offseason. I think it's been smart, tactical, and try to get back to that more explosive offense at the end of the day is what the Chiefs need to get back to, because it's the offense that has let them down. Really, obviously in the Super Bowl that let them down tremendously, but let them down really most of the season. Really the last 2 years, the offense has really let them down. When we headed into the playoffs a year ago, obviously, I talked a lot about after the Raiders lost on Christmas Day, man. It didn't seem like this could possibly be a team that didn't even make the playoffs at that point, or at least not win the division. So, and it was all pertaining to the offense. The defense has been elite over the last few years. Before I finish up talking about the Chiefs, I've made a terrible omission in not mentioning Justin Reid. Justin Reid, another departure, going to the post-Chiefs organization, which is, when you finish your tenure with the Kansas City Chiefs, you move on to the New Orleans Saints. It is just the natural trajectory for a defensive player, or at least the NFC South, because Tershawn Wharton, of course, going to the Carolina Panthers, is where you go if you are a former Chiefs defender. You are to sign somewhere in the NFC South, and hopefully the New Orleans Saints. And in Clyde Edwards-Helaire's case, you also have a running back there. Something I picked up on the last couple of years that Twitter finally, I feel like, started to really see people mentioning that. And you had Dan Sorensen, Tyrann Mathieu, Kalen Saunders, Willie Gay, and now Clyde Edwards-Helaire at the end of the season after the Chiefs released him. And now you have Tershawn Wharton going to the Carolina Panthers and Justin Reid signing with the Saints. This one was one that kind of shocked me that Chiefs Twitter kind of blew up and was upset about because, and I said it in the preseason, that Jaden Hicks was going to take over Justin Reid's spot. He is obviously the natural successor to Justin Reid, plays similar, maybe a little bit better in coverage. We'll see over time, but obviously, and even while Justin Reid was here, he was, I feel like, polarizing for the simple fact that he was not great in coverage, but that's not what he was asked to do a lot of times. He was asked to play up around the line. He blitzed. He, was good in run fits, and Justin Reid played his part. He did a great job while he was here and helped lead this defense to a couple of Super Bowls. I don't think that you can ask for much more out of Justin Reid, but then, the moment that Justin Reid left, it was like everybody was upset that he was gone, and the Chiefs weren't keeping him around. So, all in all, like I said, B-. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about what the Chiefs have done so far and how you're feeling about this draft shaping up and where you kind of see the Chiefs going or if they're going to move around at all. That's another thing that I think gives you another piece to play with, that fourth-round draft pick for next year for Joe Thuney to possibly move up if you want to. Obviously, hearing a little bit of Luther Burden buzz to the Kansas City Chiefs, which I think would absolutely set this receiving core off. Because outside of the three guys you got, Worthy, Rice, and Brown, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Justin Watson, I was kind of disappointed to see left. I personally a Justin Watson guy. I think he's just kind of there, able to, be there for a big play here and there. Knows the offense, veteran. So seeing his departure, I think, hurts on the depth of the receiving core. We'll see where the Chiefs go and if they pick anybody else up. Obviously, D-Hop moving on to the Ravens as well. So there's not a lot of depth right there, but you have the base to, I think, a very good receiving core. So let me know in the comments below what you think about the Chiefs offseason so far. So it's been a couple of weeks since UFC 313 now. Of course, Alex Pereira losing his belt to Ankalaev in the main event of the evening. The light heavyweight title changes hands, and we're getting a lot of information now here these last couple of days about, some of the aspects of the fight, mainly, of course, Pereira being ill and his hand, I can't remember if they said it was broken or just messed up pretty good. And he did say on Errol Hawani's podcast today, where he went on, and they talked about that it was an issue, but it did not, he doesn't want to take away from Ankalaev's performance. So it was actually Joe Rogan that reported this, that's made its circles around the MMA, news rounds, whatever you want to call it. And Pereira confirmed it on Errol Hawani's podcast today now. And I don't know. I like how Pereira is taking it, where, he's saying he doesn't really want to talk about it just for the simple fact he doesn't want to take away from Ankalaev's victory. And I respect that because, all of these guys are going in there with, something wrong with them. And, I feel like when you get to the fight, a lot of times problems don't matter too much. I know going into the fight I had, my right hand was jacked. I honestly did not think I'd be able to throw a punch. It's kind of like my wrist, like my thumb area was pretty messed up. And then I totally forgot it was messed up during the fight. I threw my right hand plenty of times. So I think that, there are issues, obviously. Nobody's going into a fight 100%. When you're training and you're training at that level, like, I don't even know what that's like to be at the UFC title contention level and, what you're doing in the gym day in, day out, sparring, all of these things to get better to, the mindset of a fighter is always, I'm going to work harder than that guy's working. And obviously none of us know what the other guy's doing. So we're just going to go harder and harder and harder. And, bodies tend to fall apart. The mind is always more powerful than what your body can do. And I do think that Pereira's handling that very well in a sense. There's also been, I was just looking at greasing allegations now. And Ankalaev's corner one of his coaches saying that, one, that they definitely felt like he was greased up during the fight, which I think is an interesting take, which there's plenty of ways you can do that and, kind of get around, there's the stories of guys that, put a ton of lotion on their body before they go out there. It's kind of dried up. Once you start sweating, that lotion is coming out through your pores. And, that is what Ankalaev's corner was kind of saying, where his sweat was gelling up. It wasn't just flowing off of his body, which, either way, I don't, how do I say this without really just kind of giving a pass to Pereira, because I don't think it affected the fight for real. And, Ankalaev was still able to control him up against the fence. It didn't come off that he was greased. I didn't think that while I was watching the fight or even think about it, but, I don't know. But the accusation that was made that Glover Teixeira knows well about this, so kind of throwing Teixeira under the bus of just saying, hey man, your boy's a known greaser, and we think he greased you up. So I do think that, kind of a little bit of bad blood coming out of this fight between the two, and I assume we will see a rematch at some point. And obviously the reign that Pereira had, he's kind of the boogeyman of that division there for a minute. And we all enjoyed it. I know that a lot of UFC fans pretty disappointed about Pereira losing the belt, but I don't know, man. I just had a feeling, and I wish I would have talked more about this or, a little bit of time off. But the other thing that he was dealing with was norovirus. And so now this one is, somebody else kind of brought that to my attention, that kind of, a sickness that kind of been going around. And I think that might have been what I had, because, let me tell you, when I tell you whatever I had, if this is what he had, the you're not holding on to anything. Let's just put it that way. It's coming out either way, and you're going to be depleted. So I could kind of see that, because Pereira in that whole fight, I kind of thought he didn't press, he didn't do anything. He just kind of hung out for 5 rounds and let Ankalaev kind of determine, especially there towards, after the first round or so. He really kind of just deferred and let Ankalaev control the pace of the fight, which in a fight like that, against a guy like Ankalaev, that has, good stand-up, great wrestling, you cannot let him, control the pace of the fight. And that was really Pereira's downfall. So, we will see in a rematch if, how much those things affected him in that first fight. But, I just had an unwavering feeling that Ankalaev was probably going to get the job done in that fight. It just kind of felt like it, I don't know how to explain that. I'm sure, my fight fans and, just sports fans in general, you just kind of get that feeling of, I don't know if they got this one, whether it's a big game, a football game, or a big fight like this, where it's just like, you kind of just feel like, I don't know, man, that guy might have what it takes to beat this guy. So, I don't know. Interesting stuff. I'd like to know your guys' thoughts and comments as well on everything that's kind of going on with the fallout from the UFC 313 main event. We have had a couple of fight night cards since then, and that included this past weekend with Leon Edwards absolutely getting shut out by Sean Brady. Sean Brady moves to 18-1 and really looks like the clear-cut number one contender for Belal Muhammad at 170 at this point. So, and the welterweight division right now is just a very fascinating division, because it doesn't feel like anyone really has control of that division. And, Belal Muhammad came in and absolutely, went straight through Leon Edwards, and that's been almost a year now. And I don't think that we've seen Belal Muhammad since, actually. I could be wrong. I'm going to look this up real quick, see if we've seen Belal since, but I don't think that he has fought since he won the belt. No, he's not. UFC 304 back July 27th, 2024 in Manchester, England. Who has a victory. So that is Sean Brady's one loss. See, now this is 170 is one division that I really need to get caught up on. of contenders and whatnot. I mean, obviously you've got Shavkat as well, which is going to be a huge fight. So I guess going back to my comment I just made about Sean Brady, kind of clear-cut number one contender, you still have Shavkat there. I mean, I think that he, between those two right there, you have a couple of contenders lined up. And I mean, Bilal's going to need to put that belt on the line soon. He might have a fight scheduled. I mean, it's almost been a year at this point. Look forward just a little bit. UFC 314, nothing scheduled there. Let's go 315. Okay. Interesting. And it's going to be Jack Della Maddalena who is going to get the title shot at UFC 315. That'll be Saturday, May 10th. Valentina Shevchenko also defending her flyweight belt. They've got Gilbert Burns on the card as well. Shaping out to be a decent card. Alexa Grasso also on this card at UFC 315. Go back to these last couple of weekends, though. And then going back to the week before, I did not catch any of these. How about Chidi Njokuani? He's still in the UFC. Honestly, did not know that. Won the co-main event a couple weekends ago. And Roman Dolidze, which I feel like since I've kind of been talking about MMA on the pod, Dolidze has kind of started to kind of make his a run, to get towards the top of that middleweight division. Maybe inject some new life in the top of that division. Wouldn't be bad. He beat Marvin Vettori last weekend. And then going back to Sean Brady, or that was 2 weekends ago, so Sean Brady last weekend. But also Carlos Ulberg getting a dub over Jan Blachowicz, unanimous decision. Kevin Holland back in the win column. I had thought he had a funny quote about that. For everybody that's been with him, we're back in the win column. For everybody that doubted him and stuff, or has been with him and kind of doubted him, I know it's been tough. And so Kevin Holland's a fascinating guy. I mean, he's out there, and we know what his intentions are. He's just trying to get to a payday, and respect. He's a fun fighter. He's fun to watch. I will give him that. He is annoying sometimes, I think, to some of us that like Kevin Holland. I think that I would consider myself somewhat of a fan of Kevin Holland. I mean, he's, like I said, exciting fighter. And he's kind of like that weird. He's a gatekeeper. That's, I think, the best way to describe Kevin Holland. Very good gatekeeper. So he defeats Gunnar Nelson, longtime UFC vet. And Gunnar Nelson, I definitely thought that he was going to rise through the ranks better than what he's done. He's kind of had an up and down career. A lot of injuries, though, too, in his career. But going back to just this card in general, I didn't watch any of it, really. I kind of just watched, read the play-by-play through it. And obviously saw Sean Brady dominated Leon Edwards, which Leon Edwards is at a really weird place, I think, right now, where you got to the belt, and I don't know if it's maybe kind of a thing of, like, believing your own hype with Leon, but like I said, I haven't actually watched the fight. I just kind of read through some play-by-play of it. So I am going to go back and watch that and just kind of see what we saw to Leon, because, and it's one of those things where it's like an MMA, and in any sport, I think, that we can agree with, where it's like some guys just get into that zone, and it's like you have a certain amount of time in that zone. And I think fighting more than any other sport, really, where it's like, we put these guys like Bald Volk, or like some of these guys that are just on that next level of GSP's run at the end at welterweight. How many defenses did he have? Anderson Silva through his crazy run. We get these mythical figures in MMA. BJ Penn when he was training hard. Like things like that, where it's like you have that certain amount of time. What can you do with it? How do you maximize, this time as this mythical fighter, essentially, and create a legacy? And if Leon Edwards is on the back end of that, I mean, that's tough. I mean, he only got one title defense against the guy that he beat. We'll see how he bounces back from this, but I don't really like the optics of it, just from what Sean Brady had talked about after the fight, how he was very, just not cordial with them. Their corner wasn't. I don't know any of the backstories of maybe they had beef before that, or, what exactly, what that was from. But at the same time, you're looking at Leon Edwards losing back-to-back fights in England. maybe not back-to-back, because I do remember, I feel like he had another, no, it was just a blowout fight. So he had a fight that was scheduled, that was canceled, versus Jack Della Maddalena, but that was supposed to be for that card. I guess good for Jack Della Maddalena, because he goes from fighting Leon Edwards in kind of a title eliminating fight to fighting for the belt against Bilal Muhammad here in a couple of months. Sean Brady, though, big win for him, and he is going to move up the rankings. What we got next? UFC Mexico. Brandon Moreno meets Steve Erceg, which I think will be an interesting fight. Kind of get a feel of, where each of those guys are in the flyweight ranks, which, Brandon Moreno's got a chance to get back up there and, contend for the belt once again now that you have a new champion. Of course, him and Figgy had, 4 or 5 fights in a row. It seemed like they just fought every few months for a while. I saw a meme about that the other day about, I miss the old UFC when Moreno and Figgy would just run it back every 3 months. And that was an interesting time in the flyweight division. But exciting fights. They were always exciting fights. Like, I don't think that any of us got tired of those fights where it's like, if you had that with a lot of other guys, it'd be like, man, again? I think we got to that point almost with Grasso and Shevchenko. And, for Grasso, unfortunately for her, that last fight just was not her night at the Sphere. Co-main event, Manuel Torres versus Drew Dober. Drew Dober will look to finally get back in the win column. Kevin Gastelum is supposed to fight on this card, so we'll see if Kevin Gastelum actually makes it to fight night. It's supposed to be a middleweight fight. As we know, the man has struggled with making weight. It's been well documented. Raul Rosas Jr., he will return to the octagon as well in front of the Mexican crowd, which I think will be awesome. And at this point, bro debuted, I think, at 18. He's now just 20 years old. Kind of crazy to think that he's been in the UFC as long as he has. But I think they're doing a good job at kind of trying to bring him up slow. He's 10-1 now. And I do think that's the right thing to do. You get a kid that young, it's going to be hard to, you don't want to burn the star out, right? And I think we've seen that so many times in all sports, but especially in fighting, when a guy gets to that level and just the star just burns out early. And then all of a sudden you got some, maybe like Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis is a fairly good example. I'm not sure what his age was, but Q Wheatie box is sitting behind me. I had Anthony Pettis on a Wheaties box there at the beginning of his UFC reign, and then all of a sudden kind of just fell apart and became one of those guys that just goes out there and scraps. Definitely a fan favorite and was a great fighter, but feels like he just kind of burned out really quick. It was on superstardom status and had a trajectory to be, what a lot of people thought maybe like end up being the greatest lightweight of all time, and a guy that could float between 145 and 155, and he ended up fighting at 170 at one point. And so I think that that's something you got to watch out for. But Raul Rosas Jr. definitely has a shot to be, I think, a star in the UFC at some point. But again, continue to work him up slowly, and I think that he has a great trajectory. Looking forward, we have Emmett versus Murphy coming up. Another kind of mid-tier fight night. Brad Tavares versus Gerald Meerschaert. That's kind of funny. How long has Brad Tavares been in the UFC? UFC 314 is going to be the next big event. That's going to be a huge card. That will be April 12th, so we are, 3 weeks out. That's, of course, going to be Volk versus Diego Lopez for the vacated featherweight belt. Michael Chandler returns to meet Paddy Pimblett. This fight right here, I think, is a perfect fight. Let's really gauge where Paddy's at. Of course, he beat Tony Ferguson. He's been on this tear where I think like maybe about 2 years ago we were all kind of like, okay, he's a big star, across the pond, as they say, and is becoming a star just in general in MMA. But at the same time, he's not on that level yet. So we're really going to get a kind of a heat check on where Paddy Pimblett is for real in the scheme of, the top guys in the world, and if he can compete on that level. The Bryce Mitchell-Gene Silva fight, I'm pumped for that just for all the silliness involved in it. And Gene Silva has looked like a man. you know what? Like a man possessed will say. Which, if you know, you know the backstory of what's going on with that fight at the moment. But Gene Silva is absolutely on a tear right now. I watched each of his last 2 fights live, and I mean, that last fight at UFC 313, absolute just terror. He looks to be in the octagon. Yair Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. Hey man, especially if you've been around the sport for a long time, like your boy has, this is a fight that means a lot. Shout out Ray. He is, I know me and him are both very excited to see Patricio Pitbull finally in the UFC, finally fighting the top competition. To give him Yair right off the bat, like, that's going to be a barn burner, I think. And we'll really get to see where Patricio is at. I would love to see Patricio able to move his way up and, you know, maybe contend for the title. I don't know at this point in what his age is. 37 years old. So, I mean, he has very limited amount of time. If he's going to, it's now or never, basically. Jeff Neal versus Carlos Prates. I think it will be a good fight, too. Both of those guys solid. So, some good stuff and some stuff going on in the UFC right now. I mean, a lot of these fight nights, man, I don't know. Like, I just think that it's, I get it. You know, you're putting on fights and we need to watch these guys, you know, ascend, but it's just like the oversaturation. There's so many fight nights. It's like every weekend I'm falling behind and not watching this or that. And, you know, with everything going on in the sports world, you got baseball season coming up, March Madness, you know, these last couple of weekends. Whole lot going on in the sports world to try to keep up with if you are a fan of all sports, which I tune into March Madness every year. I can't say I'm a basketball fan, but unfortunately the Tigers got dealt with in the opening round by, it was Drake. Tough one there. But to wrap up, just kind of like a rundown of the UFC and things going on, I am very excited for... I'm actually pretty interested to see this Urseg and Moreno fight in Mexico. And just Raul Rosas Jr. I feel like I like keeping tabs on him, just kind of see how he's progressing through the ranks. I think that is a much more interesting card than maybe we had last weekend or coming up the following weekend. Obviously, UFC 314 coming up, that's going to be huge. So excited to see these fights. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think and what you're excited for coming up in the next month or so for the UFC. But with that being said, I think that's about all I got. We got a long podcast talking Chiefs, talking MMA this time, this go around. I've been out for a couple of weeks. Like I said, I was pretty sick as well through that. So just kind of took a little bit of time away, which I didn't really plan on, but I think that I'm just going to make this a yearly thing because, man, the grind of creating the content is real and, you know, trying to keep up with everything while you got real life going on as well. But I do really enjoy making this content and just talking sports, really, and building a little bit of a community. Shout out to y'all that have subbed and have been watching my content while I've been away the last few weeks. That's awesome to see and always fun to come back to because I think that we gained on the channel a few subscribers while I was out. And when I opened up the YouTube Studio app, I was just like, wow. You know, it's kind of crazy when you put stuff out there and it's just like people keep watching. So I really do greatly appreciate that. It means a lot. And, you know, I do just enjoy making this content. And, you know, really I started all this for me. The YouTube channel is now 2 years old. I got a notification about, which is just insane. I started this whole channel off really just doing Substack and kind of writing sports, you know, like blogs and mainly focused around the Chiefs. Kind of basically what this channel has become. You know, that was the start of it. And, you know, obviously going back to the Schro Show, you know, I've always enjoyed doing this kind of stuff, but, you know, started to kind of do something for myself and just on my own. And this was not really the plan to do a podcast or to do the YouTube channel. But that's where the Substack kind of progressed. Really, Seth Kaiser got me into Substack, reading his and just kind of wanting to do something similar to what he does to a point, kind of put my own spin on it, doing the film breakdowns. I mean, really, that's all like Seth Kaiser straight up inspired me to start doing that for myself and, you know, being a huge Chiefs fan and seeing this guy that's, I think he's up somewhere in like Minnesota or something that's a lawyer and does this like on the side and has become this figure in the Chiefs community that we all, really look at, in a good light, I think. I think Seth Kaiser really smart dude, and, I don't know if he played football. I did not play football. That's why I like talking MMA too when I get a chance. I feel like I built this up around the Chiefs, but it's like I was a fighter. Like this is what I really know. So even with the film breakdowns, I appreciate the good and the bad comments, because I'm learning too, and working my way to becoming just better at breaking down film and seeing stuff on the fly and whatnot. So I really do enjoy it. I plan to really work on the gaming channel as well. MLB The Show 25 coming out. I plan on doing more with MLB 25 The Show and really getting into that and start kind of getting some of these older games going. I enjoy all the old games, and any of the new Maddens just make me realize how much I really enjoy, like going back to Madden 06, Madden 07 and playing when the game was good. But I digress. I'm gonna get out of here though and quit rambling, but I just wanted to let anybody that has stuck around this long in the podcast to know how much I appreciate and value the support, the subscribes, the comments, everything. I really do appreciate it. It's been a fun run so far, and I continue to keep on making this content and putting it out for you guys, and for myself as well. So it's just as much for me as it is for you guys. It's fun to kind of look back on and hear my takes from years past and whatnot. So again, greatly appreciate it. If you enjoy any of my content, make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. We are on the road to, I guess, 350 or 400 at this point. The main goal is to try to hit 500 before the end of the year. Personally is my goal, so just to let you guys know. I know that we can do it and make it happen. We're building a pretty cool community over here, and get them comments rolling in. Let me know what you guys think about the Chiefs, about the UFC, what's going on in there, or whatever I'm talking about, or something you want to hear me talk about or address. So until next time, we'll see you on the Papa Schro Knows podcast.